and tacos for dinner. We're good? Oh, we're getting sound now? Okay. YouTube and Facebook? Okay. What? Yeah. Oh, okay. But we are live streaming it, so then we can have a link on YouTube so people who wanted to watch it later could. So, you think we need that for sound? Oh, but do I need to open it up then? Just a second. I don't think so. Just a second. I just haven't used Zoom in a while on my phone. Okay, okay, if I start from room and as a companion, or if I just start it, I'll start from room as a companion, then can I be unmuted and mute everybody else? Oh, I'm confused. Okay, but I don't want them to see me. So I was going to turn off my... Okay, but they can see me on Zoom, right? No, they can't see me on Zoom, can they? Oh, but we're going to share the screen. Is it shared?
Recording in progress.
Okay. Okay, I'm staying participant, and I am not muted so people can hear me. Christy, can you hear me? Testing. Okay. Well. Oh, she's muted. She can chat though, right? I feel stuck. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Oh, yay, thanks. Okay. Yes, okay. Oh, look, and they get to see the pictures really nicely. Ha ha. Nathan's so smart. So, Nathan, I just want to say thank you, one, for all of your prayers while we were prepping for Israel, in Israel, coming home from Israel, and recuperating and processing after Israel. And also just being there for our family through just years of ministry, and Christy's iPhone left. And it was an amazing trip. And I am so thankful that we got to go. And Nathan did not want to talk. He was going to be the sound guy and running all the computer stuff. So after this, though, we can we can do questions if you guys have questions after I'm done. But anyway, let me pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we love you. And we thank you for today. And I thank you for this opportunity to spend time with friends, Lord, in a slightly more formal way with a mic. But God, you are good. So just speak through me and the slides, and may I share clearly, Lord, all that we learned. Lord, we love you and we thank you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Amen. So this is our view of Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives. So that's the Temple Mount that you see there, and then there's did you give me a laser pointer? No. So the great dome that's kind of behind, like to an angle back behind the gold dome, that's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So that's where they think, so the temple is what they think was the temple was just left of the Dome of the Rock, or to the right, to the left. And then the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was where they think that he was crucified and buried as well. So it's not very far from the Mount of Olives, as you can see. But before we get to Jerusalem, right, we got into Israel, and let's show a picture, though. Let's do the map next, Nathan. Okay, so here's a map of Israel, and I'm going to come up here. Can you see me if I come all the way up here? So here's Israel right here, right? And so here's where we were. And then there's the Jordan. Up in that little box just left of Damascus is the Golan Heights. And then we have Lebanon and all of Syria, right? And Damascus is here in Syria. We have Cyprus, which comes into play later, and the island over there. And Iran is all the way over there. Okay? So this was pretty much like the world in which, oh, thanks, Nathan. But remember, that blurs our picture. But, oh, maybe not. Oh, we won't do it from, just so y'all know, every time I was doing a slideshow, or I was showing the slides on on the TV from my computer, and I would move my cursor, it would blur the picture. So that's what I was thinking he was doing. But yeah, so we did not go to any portion of this part of Israel while we were there. But yeah, we weren't there. Okay, so our first day we arrive in Tel Aviv on the 3rd, and we immediately drive up towards Netanya. So we go up the coast towards Netanya. This is Nathan right before we go into customs, just so you can see that we were really there. And so Tel Aviv is, I didn't mark Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is right here. And then Netanya is halfway up the coast. So then we were up, Nathan's gonna, I don't know, we don't have a bigger picture. But you can look at the map later. I circled all of the places that we were at. But we spent the night in Netanya on the Mediterranean Sea, which was beautiful. And Nathan, as I talk, you can just keep scrolling through pictures. But the food there was amazing. Like, I was not expecting all of the food that we got to eat. So it was amazing. I'll go back, I guess. So yeah, because I took out the other picture of the Mediterranean Sea. But that is the Mediterranean Sea, which was really kind of cool. So I got to put my feet in the Mediterranean Sea. The beach was kind of rocky, but smooth stones, and sandy. And they were building all of those breakers where the water comes up on the beach. And just north, we're looking towards the north, and if you kept going up the coast, we could see from around the corner this big machinery. And then when we got to Caesarea Maritime the next day, we could see it to the south, which was kind of cool. But also, we could also see, what's kind of cool is that, these are houses, right? That's a swimming pool. That's a swimming pool. That's a swimming pool. There was a kid swimming pool in a house over here. But the people had, it's not working. The people had pools on their roofs, right? And so if you think about when David was higher, right, he was higher up in his palace and looking down into the city, because there was lots of hills and things in Jerusalem, that when he looked down, Bathsheba, who is in ending her cycle or whatever, had to take a cleansing bath. So she was ritually cleansing herself, and it would have been on the roof. So that's where then he could have easily seen her. But it was interesting to see all these swimming pools on the roof, because we don't normally see that. So we just were in Netanya for one night, and the next day we went to Caesarea Maritime, and every time we got someplace, we would stop and talk about it for 15, 20 minutes. And then we would go to another area, and then we would stop and talk about it. And our tour guide, Yoav, amazing guy, has grown up in Jerusalem. His dad grew up in Jerusalem, just generations of growing up there. But also still involved in the IDF, but how to take classes to be a tour guide. And he's phenomenal. He's the same tour guide that Dr. Tom has used for years. And we'll see a picture. Actually, you can kind of see him, but not really. But he also is a consultant for The Chosen, which is kind of cool, because Dr. Tom was like, you have to watch The Chosen. So then Yoav watched The Chosen, and then he was like, the sun doesn't set on that side of the town. I live there, right? And so he sent them a letter, very kind letter, but told them about their mistakes, and they fired the New York Jewish rabbi that they were using and hired Yoav. So that's our tour guide, which is kind of cool. But so this is our group, and all of the places that we went, we were some of the only people there. Like there would be family tourists that would be in these different places, and most of the time they looked like they were from Israel or from Europe, somewhere closer by. But there weren't many tour buses. We were like the only one almost every place that we stopped. And generally, like definitely before COVID, the place would be packed, right? And so we were some of the only people here. Nathan, you go to the next picture. And Caesarea Maritime is where Herod the Great built his palace in 20 BCE. And so apparently, like, he was on the wrong side of the war with Caesar Augustus, and so he's trying to make things right. So he built a port, and this is one of the first ports, and he used cement, like, which is crazy because it took forever for us to learn how to use concrete again. But he would use concrete ballast in the water to keep his palace. So that square is like part of his palace. It was out on the water, which was really cool. And I love architecture. And Herod the Great, or we called him the not so great, because he was a horrible person, was an amazing architect and very intellectual in his architecture, but he was a horrid person who had his wife killed, who had his sons killed, who later, when Jesus was born, had all the babies near Bethlehem killed, because he was always trying to one up and to make sure that he was king of the Jews. So we were there, and Nathan, you just keep scrolling through the pictures. But the architecture, like the horse stables, this was like some of the walls as we were going in, and this stuff like 2,000 years old, right? This was a theater that he had built. It's still the original theater. They had like put some new rocks on there, but a lot of the old rocks were there. So yeah. So then from Caesarea Maritime, we went to Megiddo, and one of the newest or the most recent forms, or what am I trying to say? Like sightings or whatever, is when it talks about Armageddon. Megiddo, right? So Megiddo was a tell. So there were 27 different like civilizations or cities that were built one on top of another. And King Ahab was one of the last that built anything on top of Megiddo. So like all of the structure that we saw on top was built by him. And so the next picture, I think, is the cistern, Nathan. Yes. So this is the grain bin, right? Like he built this as a grain bin, and then he built a water cistern and a tunnel to get out of the city, and also built grounds for horse training and all of that. So we went there, and it was really kind of hot, and we saw really cool like millipedes everywhere. Okay, keep going. And then from there we went to Nazareth, and I was going to show a picture, and then decided to take it out. One of the things when we were driving through Nazareth, which is mostly Muslim now, and much bigger than it used to be, right? It used to be a little tiny town where Jesus was from, is now there. We drove through Nazareth to go up to the brow of the hill. And so where this picture is at, and that's our group, there were 40 of us, we're looking out over Nazareth, right? And we're looking out over the Jordan Valley and the plains, and I was just struck by how much we need to pray for the lost, right? And that there were lost people when Jesus was there, right? And we're looking out to where Jesus lived and where Jesus was at. And this place is where it's said to be that when Jesus was in the synagogue there in Nazareth and then said, I am he, I am the one to set the prisoners free and the captives and the oppressed, and heal the lame and the blind. And then they were like, who do you think you are? And they took him out to the hill to stone him and to throw him off the cliff, and he walked away unscathed, right? That's where they think this was at, or could have been something very near, because it was a tall hill and brow like cliff near Nazareth. So we went there, and just again, like remembering that how important it is for us to pray for our community, right? And to pray for unity. But one of the pictures, again, that I didn't show was of a bunch of trash on our way up to the brow of the hill. And they just dumped it. And Yoav was like, I am so sorry. This is so bad. Like when you look at like third world countries and like trash heaps, Like, that's kind of what it looked like. And he said it's because of the political unrest between the different Muslims and between the Christians and the Muslims and the political power it be, and not cleaning up areas and cleaning up others, and how they were taking care of the city. And so they were doing that in protest, which broke my heart, that they would destroy a part of their village just to make a point, which was really sad. And then we got to the brow of the hill and got to see all of that. Then from there, we made our way to the Sea of Galilee, and spent 3 nights there, like 2.5 days. And it was definitely, I don't know, it was my favorite place. Nathan, would you say it was yours? Yeah, like this, being near the Sea of Galilee. So, I want to come up. So we're here at the Peace Overlook. So we're on the west side. We're over here, right down here. Like, I had to look it up and use ChatGPT today to figure out exactly where we were on that side, because we went through the Golan Heights. And the Golan Heights was then taken in as a territory of Israel, but it hasn't been recognized by any of the other countries until just recently. But we were up in the Golan Heights area, like up in here, and then came down in here to be able to see the whole Sea of Galilee. Like, they called it a sea, and you'll have to like, guys, it's a lake, because you can see the entire thing, right? But we could see where Jesus walked and where he lived and where he did 70% of his ministry was around the Sea of Galilee. And so when we were here this first time, we looked out over the water and we could see to the east or to the south, and we could see to the west, right? And we could look across and see all where Jesus did his ministry, which was just phenomenal. And again, like, when I was looking out over the water, I was like just floored and humbled and blessed to be able to be in the place where Jesus lived, right? And to be able to look out over the water and all of the stories in the New Testament. Like, I have a deep connection to water, and why, if some of you know, I go out to the lake and I like to go kayaking, and I haven't been this summer, just because I went to Israel, and a couple other reasons, right? But just to be near the water was so peaceful. And here at the Peace Overlook is where they also believe that Jesus sent the herd of pigs into the water when he sent them out of the demon-possessed man. And when we got there, like right when we got there, there was like, hey, check out the pigs, and some wild pigs like ran by, and we thought it was funny. But yeah, it was pretty cool. And then from there, we went to a place called Katzrin, where we got to dress up like the people, right? And see what it was like to be in a village, right? In the Golan Heights and in a community at that time. So we got to thresh wheat, and like some people got to pound it, and then we got to they gave us dough that we made, flat to put on like this big dome to heat it up, and then we got to eat it, which was pretty cool. But this right here is not like from 2,000 years ago, and is it's not the olive press, but it's what they would add a donkey or move it, and it's what crushed the olives. And then they would go over, and then there was another one where they'd put it in a bag, and then they would twist it and smush it. And so all of that was there. But that is from an original from way back then. It's just really kind of cool to see that it's still there. And in the fall, they do use it to press the olives, which is kind of cool. So Nadine, keep going. And then from there, from Katzrin, then we had lunch at this really cool place. And then we went to Caesarea Philippi. And Caesarea Philippi is where Jesus said, who do the people say that I am? And they're like, some say Elijah, some say a prophet. And he's like, who do you say that I am? And Peter said, you are the Messiah, the Son of Christ, right? Or the Son of God. And so this is near there. So this cave, which kind of goes down, and there was a spring, they believed to be the gate of hell, and where they worshipped the god of Pan. And so it's again, and these are the etchings that were in the rock there from, again, over 2,000 years ago, which was kind of cool. And when you come to, when you look at the Chosen and they come to this scene, it looks very similar to what it might have been. And that's our group again. So you can kind of see there was a incline, but the rocks and how much of the carving that they did into the stone. And Yoav's, the guy laying on the ground, that's our tour guide. He had just turned 50. He's got a daughter who is 9, and then some older children as well who were serving in the IDF while we were there. But that's all of us there. And it was hot that day. And also there's this natural spring there in Dan. And Dan is the very northern part of Israel. So, it's way up here. That's where Dan is at. And so last year, the group that went was not able to go because of the conflict with Syria. So Dan's way at the top. And when we got to Dan, after Caesarea Philippi, which is right below it, this was where they believed that Jeroboam built the altar to one of the 2 golden calves that he had made after King Solomon. So his father Solomon died, Jeroboam took the 10 tribes, and he's like, oh, I don't want them to go worship in Judah because then maybe they'll go back to Judah and then I won't be king anymore. So he built one in Beersheba and one in Dan, in the northernmost part of the kingdom. And so this was the altar that he built. And then the next picture, I think it's our group again. Yes. And right behind us is Lebanon, 50 yards away. So we were that close to Lebanon. And so it was, and that's again, the stonework and the area that they had to worship the altar that's right in front of that. So we went there, and then from there, we headed back to the lake. I'm pretty sure. Yes. Then the second day, we took a tour on a boat, so we were out on the lake, which was just phenomenal and beautiful. And we were able to see from the water the landscape where Jesus taught and where he lived, because we could see Capernaum, and we could see the primacy of Peter, where they say that Peter was restored to faith after denying him 3 times, when Jesus says, Peter, do you love me? 3 times. And so this is the boat, and we were all on the boat, and then we all were dancing. We all got to do this dance that's like a wedding dance, and it's fun. But that's all of us together, all 40 of us there. And the dance, and then we took pictures. See, we're happy. It was fun. And then from there, we got off the boat, and then this is the Church of the Beatitudes, which was on the hill of the Beatitudes, where they think that Jesus, preached that. And so we talked about just God's ministry again. Everywhere we go, we sat and talked for half an hour. So this is a view from the church of the Sea of Galilee. And then it's hard to see in the picture, but the land would slope up. So it was easy to see where Jesus would be able to be on the hill and be able to preach, and his voice would carry to all of the people off the water onto the hill. So it was kind of cool. Okay. And then from there, we went to the primacy of St. Peter. So everywhere that there's a holy site, they built a church, right? And so this is the church of the primacy of St. Peter. This is where they believe, on those rocks. And then if you go to the next picture, they built the church over the rock. And so she said, Peter, that you will be my rock. And he's all of the things. And so this was inside the church there. It was beautiful. And that was really cool too, to be able to see this, it's right on the Sea of Galilee. So when they would have come off the shore and Jesus had his meal there, right, ready for them. It was kind of cool. Okay, Nathan, keep going. Now we get to Capernaum from there. So it's the original city of Capernaum from 2,000 years ago. So Jesus lived in Capernaum for about 3 years when he was doing ministry there. And so these are kind of the walls and the areas in which you could see. And so it's the dark stone. So there was a lot of volcanic stone. So it was I can't remember the word, like the balsam stone or whatever, so it's darker, right? And so that you could see that the city was made with the dark stone. And at the very back of the picture is under that building is where they believe Peter or his mother-in-law's house to be. And so this, like that, and there's a little cat on the wall, but that is like they put a structure around it, like so, like the early church then put a structure around the house, and then put another structure around the house, and then they built a church on top of the house, as one of the holy sites, right? Like to keep it holy and to keep it preserved. Yes, Tim? Good question. I was not paying attention by that time. No, like we have, so there is, that brings me to a great point. There are a bunch of brochures outside from each of the places that we went to, but I think it's because there was evidence of like structures around, like that were separate from, like, because these stones, notice, are like, well, they're dark, and I had to like edit the picture, but a little bit wider, because there's a house structure inside, and then that wall around it, and then there was another wall all the way around it with like, so it's hard to explain. But yeah, and I think just oral tradition as it continued to move down, and as the early church, because it was Peter, right? So they would have known, the early church would have known it was Peter's house or his mother-in-law's house, and then as the church continues, like in making that a holy site, because the church is good at that. So, yeah, and then the next picture, if I can see where we're at. Okay, so this is kind of cool too. So the darker stone on the bottom is where the remains of the synagogue where Jesus taught, and he would have been, right? Because it's darker. And then later they came in 4th century AD, they built another synagogue there in Capernaum, and it's white. So the white stone means that they paid to bring in that white stone, because white was more of a sign of wealth and affluence and purity, and so they would make their synagogues out of the white stone. So it means that Capernaum was a pretty wealthy community to be able to then bring in the white stone near the 4th century AD. So it's kind of cool, like the difference. So the original, they could see like the original walls and flooring of the synagogue, and then they built one on top of that synagogue. And then from Capernaum, we went up to Mount Arbel, right? Here's the inside of the synagogue. And it was really hot. Like the sun was reflecting off of all of the columns. It was warm. Okay. I want to swipe the slides. Okay. So then we went up to Mount Arbel and to look out over the Sea of Galilee. And to the left, like what you can see along that coast right there is where Jesus did his ministry. So those are all the cities where Jesus was at and did his ministry, which is really kind of cool. Okay. And then where we were staying at in Magdala was like Mary of Magdalene, right? This is a 1st century synagogue that they unearthed and uncovered. And so the church was able to, one, claim it, and then 2, build a hotel and another synagogue there on the site. So we stayed on the site of a 1st century synagogue. And then also, like you can see the flooring, right? And this is a mosaic flooring, or carpet is what they called them, which is original. And you can see right there, what does that look like? Well, it does. What? It means love, right? Like it was a swastika that then was later used and taken for something bad, right? And to represent something not so good. And so when they built the synagogue in Magdala, like the new one, they used the same mosaic on the floor. And Father Kelly, who's a really cool guy, he's been a priest there for 17 years from Ireland, there in Israel, in Magdala, right? Was the priest there, and he was talking to us, and he was like, so you see this on the floor, right? And they put it there because it is exactly the same pattern that was on this floor of the synagogue there in Israel at the time. So then my note taker left. You didn't do it? Well, can you want to see if you can hit record, or do I have to hit record? We're trying to see if we can save the pictures this way instead of a slideshow. But anyway, so that then we spent our last night. So this was Friday night. So we had our Shabbat meal. So we had to dress up a little bit fancier. And every night, like, dinner was a little more fancy. So, like, we would get out of our sweaty clothes, and I would wear, actually, this is one of the outfits I wore in Israel because it was easy to pack. And then we had our Shabbat dinner. And so we would say Shabbat Shalom, or Shalom Shabbat. No, Shabbat Shalom, right? Yeah, Nathan? Maybe both ways. But really funny story. So we're trying to have dinner, but our tables, like there's 40 of us, right? Well, our tables were kind of scattered a little bit. And so Dr. Stephanie, who is one of the consultants for Churchcraft, she was like, oh, well, we'll just move the volunteers from this table to this table. And then we're like, oh, but this says the priest. And she's like, oh, they won't mind. And she picked up the priest placard and moved them to another table. That was not okay. And they let us stay there, right? But then we heard about it the next day. Like, she got in trouble, and she talked to the priest, and she was like, well, because they've been going to the same hotel for quite a while. And so it was really kind of funny, and they were joking around. And it was like the Father Magdala who, like, founded the church, was was there that weekend. So it was kind of funny. So then we left that morning, and we said goodbye to the Sea of Galilee. Nathan, was there a picture before that? Or did I delete it? Go back a little bit. It did skim. Go back. Okay, so the floor. No, that right there. That is where the Sea of Galilee enters into the Jordan River, which was kind of cool. So the Jordan River flows into the Sea of Galilee and then exits the Sea of Galilee to go then down to the Dead Sea. And so that's where it exits the Dead Sea. So that's the mouth of the Jordan River on its way to the Dead Sea. And then we stopped at a fortress that was built in the Crusades called in Belvoir. And it was really interesting. So this is a dry moat, which I didn't know they made. But basically they had to dig down and empty it out and then build up. So they, back in the Crusades, they dug down, and we could see where they had cut out the rock, and then they built up this fortress. So that's like the gate over it. Then the next one, it's just some pictures. We didn't want to talk about this whole lot. Okay, does anybody know what that's called? It's called a loophole. So you know how we have loopholes, right? So the purpose of the loophole, one, was for archers to shoot out of. But if you were on the outside and could get your, like, the little claw thingy, right, or something, and you could get it through the loophole and connect, then you could get in to the castle, right? So going through the loophole, right? And so that is where this comes from and where that term comes from, which is kind of interesting, right? So that's what we learned while we were there, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But that I spaced out again. And then again, you can kind of see like a loophole through like the stone. But the architecture again was just fabulous. And even though, it's not as old as 2,000 years, it was still really kind of cool that these French people would build all of these fortresses and then hold them for such a long time. And then from Belvoir, we went to Bet Alpha, and I didn't have any pictures there, but it was another synagogue that was a few years later. And then we went to Bet Shean, which is part of the Decapolis. And so these columns are still original. Like, Bet Shean was probably one of my favorite archaeological sites, and we only got like 10 minutes to walk around and take our own pictures because we were talking. So like we went and talked here in this really cool theater, and again, the architecture, right? So Yoav and the twins, Simon and Sadie, were standing on the stage. That's pure marble, by the way. Like, the marble's still original. But they were standing there, and we could hear paper being ripped on the stage, and we were like up at the top, and it was so hot. So like when the theater, right, when they would use like with the Romans and how they had their theater, like everything could be heard from the stage up in into the stands, which is kind of cool. So they didn't need microphones, and so that was kind of cool, and he did a magic trick with them. And then you can see the city behind it, but it was one of the Decapolis. And then we also, we were there, and we talked there, and then there was, yes, Connor? Because of acoustics. It's how sound travels, basically. Very, very elementary explanation, because I don't know. Because God is cool, Connor. Yeah, so we could hear it. And so then we walked around to another area, and then there were the bathhouses. So the bathhouses were built, and I did not, see, look, there's us. We're so pretty. And it was so hot that day. But you can see behind, where the columns and stuff were at, and, that stage was marble. So we walked back and towards the left and around. But all these people, right, they had to go to the bathroom somewhere. So these bathhouses were, really big, and the men had this bathhouse, and they had these stones on the walls. Nathan can show you a picture later, because I didn't put it in here. But you sat in between the stones, and so you had easy access to go to the bathroom, and then it would flush around. And so we all, I guess the pastors, we had to take a picture of us all sitting there. And I don't know, it was funny. But anyway, next picture, Nathan. Okay. And then this is the Dead Sea, which we found out is not really dead. We call it the Dead Sea because there's not a lot, but there's a lot of minerals and life that still flow in to the Dead Sea. But we don't fish out of the Dead Sea, right? And people don't boat in the Dead Sea because of all of the salt. But they're mining the Dead Sea. And because of the drought that they've been in for such a long time, and because everybody's been mining the salt out of the Dead Sea, it is dropped several feet, and they've lost a lot of the water as well. And they mine the water and take the water out to try to send it to other places as well. And so around the shore, there's a bunch of sinkholes, and so they have to be careful. So there's not a lot of development around the Dead Sea as well, because it's not safe structurally. And so we saw the Dead Sea, and there were a lot of, we went to a couple places. So we went to the Qumran, right, is where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so you saw all these caves, as we're driving along the road, you could see all these caves. So they were quite numerous. And it was really interesting that a boy was just trying to protect his goat and threw a stone in to stop him and heard something crash. And he's like, what's that? And they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so, Nathan, if you go to the next slide. I think. Oh, and then I switched to Masada. Oops, that's okay. So, just a second. Let me look at my notes. We left Bet Alpha, Bet Shean. We tried to go to the Jordan River, but they wouldn't let us in that day. And then the next day we visited Masada. So those are the caves that we saw. We get to Qumran the next day. And so this is Masada. So Masada was a fortress that Herod built, something else that Herod built. But what's really cool is you see, I'm going to come up here. You see this ramp that goes from here all the way over there, and then this road down? The Romans built that ramp, and it took them 3 years to enter into the fortress that Herod built on the top of this massive, very dry, very hot cliff. And so the next picture, I think, is part of his castle that was on the edge of the cliff. And they want to say that it was not that one, but the next one. But they want to say that it was his, that was on the way to Masada. But that's what it looked like, right? It's like these plateaus and up on the top. And they want to say that this fortress was his vacation home. But I guarantee you that his wife was not going to walk up this winding snake path to the top for a vacation home, right? So they believed that it was a fortress, and it was one that he never used. But then, after 70 AD, when the Jews are trying to flee Jerusalem, there was a group of Jews, about 70 of them, who went to Masada. And so they hung out there. And so they were able to have water and food and everything they needed for 3 years while they're held in siege, while the Romans were building a ramp up to them, right? And then because I think it was another one of the bathhouses, but because they didn't want to be captured by the Romans, they didn't want to be taken as plunder and as spoils of war. They didn't want anything horrible to happen to their children or their wives. They decided to kill everyone. So all of the men went and they killed their families. And then the men came together, 10 of them, and then they drew lots, right? And then they killed one another, and then the last one had to kill himself. So when the Romans came in, after they then opened up the gates and battered in the gates, they found everyone dead, which is a really sad story, right? But for them, it was better that they not be taken captive by the Romans because of what would happen to them. And so that's kind of why we stopped there. And then from Masada, we then went back to the Dead Sea, and we floated in the Dead Sea, which was really kind of cool. I know. And then we had a nice dinner. Then the next day we left the Dead Sea, and we went to the Jordan River. And the Jordan River was really low because, again, all this last winter, they didn't have any water. They didn't have any rain. They didn't have any snow. Normally, you can see snow on the mountains near Jerusalem. There was no snow anywhere in Israel right now because they didn't get any. And so the Jordan River was really low and really kind of muddy and kind of gross. And right on the other side of the Jordan River is the Jordan. So you would see like their soldiers on the other side, and people could come to the Jordan River where they say Jesus was baptized, right? And so they could come on that side and we could come on this side. But there was like a thing down the middle of the river, right? And so you couldn't cross the river, and they had people on both sides. But here we talked about like the peace of Christ, right? And that Jesus is the living water, and that water meant everything. And so Jordan and Israel for years have been fighting over the river for life, right? To sustain life, to be able to feed their families, to be able to feed their country. And Jesus is the living water, right? And we get all of our life from him. And it was really cool because so we're with a group of Methodists, and Methodists don't believe in rebaptizing people. So what they do is they remember your baptism. And so we took little bottles of water, well, like a bottle of water, and we dumped out the water. Well, I chugged mine and drank it real fast. And then we went down to the river, and as I'm trying to bend over, and my knees don't work very well anymore, I was trying to get the water, and I almost fell in, which would have been really funny. But I didn't, and I saved it. We took the water, and then we each just talked in our family groups about our baptism and what that was like and what it meant. And there were a couple of people in our group who were like, I can't really talk about it because of the emotions and all of that is welled up because of life before baptism and the life after, which was really kind of cool. And then we just put the water on our foreheads and say, remember your baptism, and then say a little prayer, right? So that's what we did there at the Jordan. There's Nathan and I, we went down to the water, and I did not fall in. And I did bring Jordan water home with me from the river. So every time we now have a baptism for a while, I can put a little bit of water in the baptismal, and it'd be kind of cool. Just as something to do, right? And then from the Jordan River, we went to the Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And this is the Essenes, or the Jews that were there, that were who they believe lived there, and then wrote down all of the scrolls and continued to copy everything, right? Lived a very holy life and very separate, and it was very, very ritualistic in the religion that they performed. And it's even said that Essenes during Shabbat did not use the restroom. So they would like fast for a couple days before then, so they wouldn't have to, right? I mean, and Shabbat's every Saturday. So I don't know, kind of interesting, right? But this was one of the pools. So this would fill up, like it was amazing what they could do with water, right? And they'd have plugs that you'd unplug it, and it would fill with water. And so it's flowing water or clean water, right? So then they could walk through it and get ritually clean. Like, was it several times a day? It was something really weird. But that's one of the pools, and it was like plastered, like it's still like thousands of years ago, right? Like, it's just so cool. Okay. And so this place too, like we talked in several different spots. And then we But then we didn't get to visit a whole lot, but we got to go to the ramp and a couple other things. And then from the Qumran, we stopped at this mall. And it was sort of outside, and we ate at the New Delhi, which is kind of like a Subway, right? And they did have an English menu, like we ordered from the screen, and it said English or, Hebrew, and so we ordered from the English menu, and we had a falafel, and it was super. We like falafels, but not everybody likes falafels, but it was really good. And there was a hamburger place just to the right of this, and then like a place where you can get pizzas or burritos right behind us. Like it was just like this mall. It was a mall. But these kids came up to Nathan and to our friend Hattie, and they're like, "Why are you here?" And so Nathan was like, "Well, we're here on a tour, like we're touring Israel and we're seeing all these different sites and it's kind of learning." They're like, "No, why are you here? We have nothing to offer you." And it was just this little community in the West Bank, right? And they were like, "We don't have anything to offer you. There's no historical site here. There's nothing that you would want to come see. Why are you here?" Right? And so, again, just being able to share the love of God, like with these kids who were there and wondering why these Americans would come to their mall, right? Of all places in Israel, why would you be here, right? And so Hattie got to talk to them too. And then we went on a Jeep ride, and we got to see the Bedouin. And then we went up onto Mount Azeret, I think. But this is what we saw. Like when they talked about the desert, this is what it looked like. There was no life. Right? And then there was the wilderness, right? So when we talk about the Judean wilderness, there are forms of life, right? There's like some plants, it's still kind of rocky. You can get water, but here, right outside of Jerusalem, right? This is what it looked like, which was really kind of cool. And it was really windy up there. And, but yeah, the Bedouin are people who live outside of the city limits, in like, I was going to put a picture in here and I didn't, in like shacks, right? They don't, and they sometimes steal electricity, but they choose to live this way because they don't want to pay taxes, right? And they believe that they should have to pay taxes and all kinds of other things. And so they live and they're shepherds, right? So you could see all the places that they went with shepherd, and they would build rocks and troughs like at angles. So when the rain did come, it would flow down and it would go into a cistern, right? And they would build these big wells and cisterns, and then they would be covered and you would have like a big rock or something. So when Jacob went to the cistern or the well to wait for Rachel to come to draw water, right? Or outside of Samaria, these wells, like, they had to wait for someone to come and move the rock so then they could get water. And then they showed like it's a pail, so like they had a pail and a rope and they have to and bring it up and then put it in the trough. So to think about like watering the camels and how long that would take. And it was very territorial, so the families owned the cistern, so you didn't just go and take someone's water because again, water is life, right? So that's one of the things that we learned there. And then we got to drive into Jerusalem, and there's this cool video that I can show you later. But the next day we wake up and we go to the Mount of Olives. And so we're standing at the top of the Mount of Olives and looking out. So Nathan, you want to use your pointer? So all of that are graves. There's 7,000 Jews buried over the last 3,000 years on the Mount of Olives. And so it goes downhill and then uphill to the city, right? And over to the left where you see all that down there, go down, no, is the Kidron Valley. So when they talk about Jesus going down through the Kidron Valley and all of that it's right outside the city down on the bottom of the walls. And the city is much bigger, as you can see, than it was beforehand. And the old city and the new city and the walls of Jerusalem have changed throughout time. So we started at the Mount of Olives and looking out. So like when Jesus was up at the top of the Mount of Olives, he can see the temple down below him. And then from there, there were a bunch of peddlers and stuff. We took a cute picture of us, right? And then we had a group picture. Oh, Nathan, I forgot to bring that over from the house. We have a group picture of us all in front of Jerusalem. But then we went down towards like the Palm Sunday road, what they believe the road was that Jesus would have taken from the Mount of Olives down into the east side of the city, right? Coming from the east into the city. And then as you go down, then there's the Mount or the Garden of Gethsemane. So there's these trees where we stopped on. And then again, like there were all of the olive groves and all of these trees. And then when we got to where they believe the Garden of Gethsemane is, which is the next picture, Nathan. Oh, no, it is that picture. No, go back. They believe that some of these trees are 2,000 years old. And that 17, Nathan, you said 17 of the trees in the garden, 17 olive trees and 8 original. They believe that 8 of these trees are still from when Jesus was there in the Garden of Gethsemane, which was interesting to see, like, as you're coming down on the city, that he could have seen, because he was still high up enough to see the people coming to the garden to take him. Oh yeah, if you don't harvest the olive trees stop producing olives. Did you know that? So yeah, so the olive trees, as long as you continue to harvest the olives, they will continue to produce olives. And also what it's called is an offshoot, right? So they would have a shoot or a new branch or a new shoot would come off from the tree. As you can see, it's like sticking out this way, right there. And new life would grow. So like the tree gets bigger and windy and moves around. So it's continually having new life, which is kind of cool. Then from there, right next to the Garden of Gethsemane is the Church of All Nations, which is this really cool building with lots of mosaics. And so that's just outside the church. And those are, I'm trying to look. Some of those are not our people, right? Because now we're in Jerusalem, so there's more people. But again, most everybody there was from our group while we were there at the Church of the Nations. And then from there, we drove to St. Peter's Gallicanti, or the house of Caiaphas. So Jesus would have been taken to Caiaphas' house, and there's a big church built on top, right? And there were like 3 layers, but underneath Caiaphas' house was a dungeon, basically. It was like these pits and these caves where Jesus would have been kept and where he could have been whipped. And but that's where he was at, in the dark, in Caiaphas' house when they took him, before he was questioned, right, by the priests and all of that. So he would have gone up again the hill. So they took him down to the temple, and they took him up to Caiaphas' house, right? And then he's here, and then Nathan, if you keep going, this is the road that they believe he then left Caiaphas' house and went down towards the city, which is right outside his house. And some of that road is original as well. And then from St. Peter's house, then we went to outside the city wall. This is like the southwestern corner. And in that corner is one of the original gates to the city. So it's the original wall and the original gates in the city. And they believe the original steps. And again, like there would normally be a lot of people there. That's our group, which is kind of cool again. But yeah, they built the wall, one of the walls in front of the gate. And they did that repeatedly, like different people who would build on the wall. But we went to where they believe the upper room was at, and then the guys got to see where they had David's bones are in this box in a synagogue, but the women didn't get to go on that side. So I was like, what was cool about that? Nathan's like, oh, we got to see the box where David's bones were at. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But yeah, so then we saw the southwest wall and the original gates, and that's more of like just the architecture around the wall. And right there is the corner of like the Temple Mount, because that's the Muslim mosque right above it. And then we go home to the inn ball and eat amazing food. And the next day, we had a really long day, but we went to the Temple Mount and got to the Dome of the Rock. And as you can see, there are not a lot of people there. And we couldn't touch. So the pictures are really awkward when we were at the Temple Mount, because we had to go through security. We had to make sure we didn't have any of our Bibles, any of our journals, any Christian articles of anything. Women, we had to have our elbows covered and our knees covered. Men as well, they had to be wearing pants. They didn't have to have their elbows covered, but they couldn't have their knees showing. And men and women couldn't touch, because we were in the Muslim quarter. And so to respect them, like for us to even be able to get in, we had to go through security. And then, so we talked about how, like the eastern gates, they have blocked off and they've built religious stuff inside the eastern gates, so that because they don't want Jesus to come through the eastern gates, which is what it is said that will happen later. But then this is really cool. This is right next to the Dome of the Rock. And this is where they believe that the actual temple stood, because this is the top of the mountain. So this is where they would have built the temple, on the top where they would have flattened it all out. When Herod built the Temple Mount, and he flattened it out and raised it up and made it all flat, which is again, the architecture of what the city of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount is sitting on. But so they built this here and put a dome over it. So the Muslims think that the Dome of the Rock is sitting on the place where the temple was, but Christians believe that this is the place where the temple was. Next picture, babe. We gotta hurry. This is the group of pastors and their spouses in front of the Dome of the Rock. So these are the people that I spent from September to June hanging out with 3 days a month on Mondays. And only half of them. So the guy behind me is Justin Mativa, who is in Festus, Missouri. So he's in our district. He broke his ribs last year and didn't get to go with his group. So he came with ours. And then Kyle on the far left, or your far right, he was in my group. And then Anthony, he's in the pink. Our spouses aren't in this picture. They're in the other picture. Anthony's in the pink. That's Anthony. They're both from Texas. And then our friend Brooke didn't come, and he's from Texas as well. And then the other guys were in the other cohort. Next picture, babe. So again, that's the mosque. And this would have been full of people. But it's just Nathan in that picture. And there were that's really cool. So Yoav told us, he goes, okay, we're not supposed to talk about Jesus. We're not supposed to evangelize. We're not supposed to talk about certain things. And so sometimes, when there's tour guides coming through, the temple police would follow you to make sure that you didn't say anything you wouldn't. And there wasn't anybody following us that day. So we got to talk about anything that we wanted, which was really cool, right? God is good. Then from there, we went to David's house. And so there's the ruins on the hill. So we got to we got to go to the Western Wall, which I didn't show any pictures of. And then we went to King David's house. And then, so this is where they believed that David lived. And then we went through Hezekiah's tunnel, which was a tunnel, again, that went from inside the city to outside the city. And the water was 55 degrees, and there was water in the tunnel, and it was dark, and there was no light except the flashlights we carried. And it was very narrow, and so I was bumping the walls. So while it was a really cool experience, I don't ever want to do it again, because I started freaking out in the middle. But also, because we're the only group, it went really fast, because normally there's a lot of people in front, so it can go really slow. And it comes out at the Pool of Shalom, where David anointed Solomon as king. So that's really cool. No, we did not, which was really good. And then from there, we jumped on a bus. We stopped at a Christian gift shop. We ate falafel in the gift shop. These things on the walls were made out of olive wood, and they were I almost got the carpet dirty. Several $1,000s. There was an eagle I wanted to buy for my dad, and it was $4,500. It was $4,500. And then I looked at one that was slightly smaller, and it was $2,300. And then the guy was like, well, $1,600. And I was like, I paid less for a car. I can't afford that. So it was kind of funny. And he was kind of offended. But then we did buy one of my necklaces there, and we bought lots of stuff for other people, which was kind of cool, that we bought them early, because on Friday, the day after this, right, this was Wednesday. Anyway, so then we went to the Herodian. Okay, those are catapult balls. Those are the stones that they chiseled to send on catapults. Is that not just astounding? They were this big. They were big, right? That would take some time. And then, so basically the Herodian was another palace that Herod built to be taller than Jerusalem, because Herod had a really big ego, right? And so then he had it built, and so he had all of this, right? All of that built, and there's a theater below this, and then when he's about to die, right? There's this theater they about. When he's about to die, he's like, I want you to bury it all. Bury it all. When I die, bury the whole thing so nobody else can use it. Like the guy was a narcissist. Like he was just a horrible, horrible man, but amazing architect, right? And all these people had to work for him all of the time to build all of these amazing things, and then just like, bury it. So that was and then that night we went to a light show that was on the north wall, and it was kind of cool. Then Thursday, which was also a really cool day, is we got to go to the Garden of the Tomb. So there's two groups of people, sets of believers that believe that Jesus was buried here is one group, and there's the Golgotha, or the Rock of the Skull, right? And so they believe he was buried here, and there's another group that believe he was buried where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is at. And so they believe, and inside the tomb, there was, they found the tomb, and so, early Christians put in some paintings and stuff to, mark it. But it was a really pretty garden, and, just very peaceful, and we had communion there as a group. So then from there, we had a Jerusalem bagel, and then we had lunch in the Muslim district, which was, I have 100 years old. Oh, the place that we ate at. So the restaurant that we ate at has been in the family for 100 years, and it was really good food. I'm telling you, it was really good. And they make this lemonade with mint leaves. I don't know. I want to find it. It was so good. But then we went on a Western Wall tour with a guy named Mordecai, who was Lebanese, and it's under the city, right? So it's along the Western Wall, underground. And what is really cool, so that's Nathan, and showing the walls, and it was really it was called the Rabbi's Tunnel. So I think that they went through in secret and things like that. But then the next picture, the floor. This was the road from 2,000 years ago. So it's very much a road that Jesus could have walked on. And so for us, and it was funny because Mordecai's like, take your shoes off. He goes, I always take my shoes off here. And he goes like this, and he doesn't have his sandals on, and he's like, you know why? It's like, well, on Mount Moriah, where they believe, it says the place where you were standing is holy ground. Right? So he took out his shoes. So he's like, take off your shoes and stand on the ground. And so some people did. And when we told our tour guide, Yoav, that's what because we had to split into two groups, he goes, and did you do it? And they were like, yeah. And he goes, why? It was so weird, right? But then, so that's our feet that's my feet. Yeah. And then we took a picture. And this is the rock of Mount Moriah. And so this man right here, that, I could cry. That is Dr. Tom Harrison. And he is the one who made it possible for Nathan and I to go, and all of the other pastors. And so we wanted to take a picture with him touching Mount Moriah, standing on ground that's been there for 2,000 years, right? And we're just and he had a stroke right before we went to Israel, a couple weeks beforehand. And so he has aphasia, so he's still relearning words. So it was a very fun trip, but we wanted to share this moment with him, and I wanted to share that with you. And then, and then we got to walk the Via Dolorosa. So we got to walk the road that Jesus took. So one of the first places was this fortress where he would have, they cast lots for his clothing and where he would have been whipped. And then there was, this is on the road, so it's through the old city. But then we get to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And so the road goes all the way to the church. And we're up near the roof where there's an Ethiopian church. And they wouldn't let them into the other part, so they stay up above. And so that's Nathan going into the door. So it's a tiny door. But then we go into the church, and this is one of the mosaics that was on the wall there. So you can see that it's just depicting Jesus on the slab and being taken down. Well, he would have been crucified, then taken down and prepared, and then put into the tomb. And so that is what all of that is showing. And you can see the ornate woodwork or the ornate work on the ceiling, and there was lots of construction, so hence the ladder, right? And then most of the people in that picture is also our group. This lady isn't in the front, and this other lady in the head covering I don't think is either, but most everybody else is. The ones that look like Americans. We were some of the only Americans there, weren't we? I mean, there were others, but I don't think very many. Okay. And then the next picture, so this, that's my friend Andrea. And this is the altar that is built on top of where they believe that the cross was set into the stone. And so underneath, so she's underneath the altar, because you can go underneath the altar and then you can put your hand in and you can touch the stone where they believe that the cross was laid. And like there's like a little square area where the cross would have set into. So they believe that that is where Jesus was crucified. And then you go down the stairs, and then this is the tomb that they built over the tomb that they believe where Jesus was buried. And so that's our line. And normally the line is hours long. But again, it was just like our group. Like all those people in that picture are our group. But the priest is very, like there's a priest who guards the door, and he's very, did you go, Wes? Like, yeah, they're very particular. Got to make sure you're covered. Got to make sure that you're quiet. Like only a couple of people go in, a couple of people come out, and you can like look down, but it was really more of just, I don't know, this is one of my least favorite places. I don't know, because it was very modernized and very idolized. And very gaudy, I think, too. Like, it's a lot of money was put into this church and decorations to celebrate and to honor the resurrection, right? The death and resurrection of Jesus. But to me, I'm like, that money could have been spent someplace else, right? Or things, and all these people come to worship this place and not Jesus, right? And so, what? It has changed quite, yeah. It was kind of crazy. Like it was, yeah. And like I have other pictures I can show you, like of the decorations on the ceiling and all of the different things. But yeah. So and it's under construction all of the time. Okay, Nathan, next picture. And then from there we went home. So, so that was the end pretty much of our tour. Like the next day we were supposed to go to the Holocaust Museum, and another museum. But that night is when, again, if you saw that map at the very beginning, don't go back all the way back. But if you went, right, like Israel's over here, and Iran was way over here, right? It's like a 24-hour drive. And that afternoon, Nathan and I had gotten a text from his mom, and she's like, did you see this? And it was like, Israel plans to strike Iran, right? And that it's in the plans. Well, then that night is when they did that. And so like at 3 a.m, I had heard one alert go off, and I was like, what is this? And I was listening for sirens outside, right? Because we hear tornado sirens. So I was listening for sirens, and I didn't hear anything. So I went back to sleep, but I felt very antsy about it. And then like 3 that morning, I heard the sirens again. Like my phone went off, and I look at it, and it's in Hebrew. So then I'm trying to like read it, like I'm trying to like get this app, right, to read it, and then I paid $35 for an app I didn't need in the middle of the night, right? And then I wake up Nathan, and I'm like, Nathan, use your phone. And so he used his phone to look at my phone, and it's like, no, this is the emergency alert. We need to go downstairs right now, right? So we went downstairs, and anyway, so we spent that time in the shelter, and then over the next few days, we spent 14 different trips down to the shelter in the basement. But these guys right here are Melissa and Anthony. Some of probably our closest friends, I think, are some of them that we hung out with the most in Israel. And I talked to Melissa like about every other day. We text. But the next day, oh no, this is the second day. So the first day we went to Bardak's Pizza, which was super yummy. But again, pizza was vegetarian because we're in Israel, right? And it was Friday, so we went to Bardak Pizza, and the city was closed, and we had the Shabbat dinner. And then during the dinner, we had another alert. So we went downstairs, right? And we're down there, and everything, it is what it is. And I'm like, okay. And then we go, and then we go back to get dinner, and then we go to one of our meeting areas to talk about what's going on and what kind of we need to do and to figure some things out, right? And then again in the middle of the night, we heard the sirens again, so we go down, And we had figured out with Yoav, I think that was Thursday night, so then Friday night. Yeah, so we'd figured out with Yoav the stairs that we needed to take. And he's like, yeah, you can take these stairs, because we thought if we pushed them, an alarm would go off, right? And we didn't want any alarms to go off. He's like, no, you can take them. Well, they went all the way down to the parking garage, so then we had to go back up to the lobby, and then across the lobby to go down the stairs to go down 2 flights to the other place. And so while we were going through the lobby, we did hear some things exploding up above, which kind of unnerved me a little bit. Kind of sounded like really big fireworks in Kansas City, right? And so we were there, and my friend Amy, who was a pastor, she's a pastor, and she went the year before. She's like, Sherilyn, you really need to go, right? And so she was one of the first people who was like, Sherilyn, are you okay, right? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, read this chapter. And so it was like 2 Chronicles 32, but it was a story of how the Israelites were singing in battle, and how God saved them in the battle through their singing. And I kid you not, I'm reading that, and right after that, as we're going in again, and I said, here we are, and she goes, read this, right? And then there was this wedding, right? And they were singing while we were down in the shelter. And I was like, God, you are so good, right? And I just soaked that in. And we put a picture, I put a picture in, but Nathan, you want to show the next picture? Nope. Keep going. Skip through and then we'll go backwards. Right there. Okay. So that's what it looked like in our shelter. So it was very bright. It was very white. If you show the next picture, that's part of our group, right? And then you show this. So some of those people are a group and some of them are not. That's Justin Mativo looking down at his phone. And but it was very jovial, right? The thing is that these people who live in Israel are going through this all of the time, right? And right now it's more often, and had been more often, but they were used to it. They'd been prepared. They knew. They were trained. They had apps, right? They knew all of this. And so it was okay when we were in there, because we knew that we were with people who were at peace as well. And there was some anxiety, but the kids were laughing and playing, and it was bright and it was happy. So every time we were down there, it's not like the shelters that we think of. The first storm shelter I went to when we lived in Gardner was cobwebby and gross and concrete, and just I never went in it again. I was like, I didn't care if a tornado was going to come take my mobile home. I was not going in that place, right? But this was an okay place. So if we go backwards again, Nathan, if we go... No. I want to go back, because they're good pictures. So anyway, if we go back, so those were our friends. And so the next day on Saturday, go back one more. On Saturday, because it's a funny story. On Saturday, we went to go to this restaurant that we found, and we were asking the host at the hotel, and he's like, yeah, you can walk here, and they should be open, because they said they were open, right? Because it's Shabbat. So there are a lot of places that won't be open because they don't work on Shabbat. So we were finding some Muslim places that would be open that we could go eat. Well, we get there and they're closed. You know why? Because the city's shut down. Because it's essentials only. Well, we didn't realize that. So, and before we had left the hotel, they're like, well, there's a Papa John's. And I'm like, I am not eating Papa John's in Jerusalem. That just seems wrong, right? And so the only place open was Papa John's. So that's where we took this picture. And it was the best Papa John's I've ever eaten in my life. It was melty and good, and it didn't make me sick. Yes, Connor? I didn't want to eat Papa John's in Jerusalem, and guess what I had twice while in Jerusalem? Papa John's. We did, because they could have meat and cheese on their pizza. So then the next place... Okay, so while we're walking around, we kept driving by this building, and I'm like, what is this building? That is the YMCA. And the next picture. That's another part of the YMCA. Kid you not. It's the prettiest YMCA I've ever seen in my life, right? And then the next picture is this windmill. So I think Sunday, right? Sunday afternoon, yes, I was waiting to get some meds, or to get a prescription for meds from a local doctor, because all of us had run out of our meds that we'd taken for our trip, right? And for some of them, this was much more serious than for me. But there was this windmill that was set up, it was in honor of one of the first communities that was built outside of the walls of Jerusalem. And so we walked to the windmill. We took a picture of the windmill. We took a picture of us in the windmill. And our phones went off that we needed to go back toward shelter. So we didn't get to hang out very long, just like the rest of our trip when we only got to be there 10, 15 minutes. Right? And we walked back, and then we were there in the shelter. And then from Tuesday morning, we got to leave. And if you remember that picture of Cyprus, this is us when we finally got to Cyprus, and we're taking an hour nap while we're at the airport for the day. And through that whole time, like I've talked to some of you about our trip, like that part of the trip, like when we were being rescued. And it's still hard to say that we were being rescued, right? Like we were refugees in a country not our own, in the middle of a war zone that we didn't want to think about being in a war zone, right? Like for us, I think we're used to like the fireworks and we're used to tornadoes. And so when there's tornado sirens or there's emergency or there's possible danger, right? Like we don't think about it. Like we're just like, yeah, it's okay. We'll go in the shelter, right? And so I think most of the time, like I knew God was in control. I knew I was going to be okay, right? If we weren't going to be okay, we're going to be with Jesus, right? Like Nathan and I knew that, but we also knew that we wanted to come home and we wanted to see our kids, right? We wanted to be with them. But I knew that God is good, right? And God is faithful all of the time, right? And so he was with us all that time, and I felt his peace all the time, and we were praying, and we were having church, and we had prayer group, right? All of those things while we're just hanging out, living life in a 5-star hotel in Jerusalem. One of my friends last weekend at the district conference, he goes, I looked to my wife, and I was like, is it wrong of me to be jealous of them right now? He goes, of all places to be stuck in a country, the Inbal is one of the best places to be. And it really was. Like we were in an amazing hotel, and it was really great to be there. So a long journey of bus rides and waiting and flying. We get to Cyprus. So this is us outside the airport, and we got to see the sunrise together, which is kind of cool. We don't normally get to see the sunrise together because I'm awake and either at work or I'm awake and he's still sleeping. So it was really cool to see the sunrise together. And then that afternoon, we got on a plane. And we flew to Cyprus. From Cyprus that afternoon. We flew all night. We arrived at 4 a.m. at the Tampa airport. And they're like, oh, you should go up and see the flamingo and take your picture. And we're like, the flamingo? I kid you not, that's Nathan. And that's like a flamingo statue that goes up to the ceiling where there's like reflection. It was the craziest thing in the Tampa airport that you'll ever see, right? Like I've never seen anything like that in Tampa airport, but it was so good to be home, right? It was so good to be in America. And we were so tired, like we were shaky, like we were sitting down in our seat and I felt like everything was moving and I felt like dizzy and it was kind of weird, but we got a lot of sleep when we got home and it was really good to be home. But yeah, so that was our trip. And one of the things too that we learned while we were there is that when you think, especially like all the things in the news again about Gaza and Palestine and the Palestinians, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is a lot more complicated and complex than we're led to believe, right? And then there's so many sides to every story, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. And so we were there, like, learning from an Israeli perspective, right, about some of the things and why the war, like why it was continuing and why October 7th happened. And they're like, we really don't know, right? And Yoav, who's been doing a lot of research and he's like, I still don't have the answer, right? But there were a lot of things that went wrong that day that shouldn't have, for there to be a terrorist attack from Hamas, right? And so Israel's fight for them, like from an Israeli perspective, is not with the Palestinian people, but with Hamas. And Hamas is in the middle between Palestine and Israel. And we also have to remember, because we saw this while we were there with the American news, not everything is as it seems, right? And the Israeli news, not everything is as it seems. So every story we get, we need to remember that there are people on both sides, and to pray for both sides and to not make judgment calls based on what we think we know, right? And so, like, if we get anything out of this, right, is that my prayer is that we pray for everyone involved in Israel and in Gaza and the Palestinians and the Lebanese and the Israelis and the Hebrews and the Muslims and the Shiites and the Druze and like the Orthodox Jews and all of the different people who live in Israel, right? To pray for each one of them because they're all living together, pretty much unified and in one place. All just trying to love the God that they're trying to love, right? And we want them to know Jesus. But we can't force Jesus on anyone like we found out about the Crusades, right? That doesn't work. So we love them and we pray for them. And we pray for our neighbor, right? And we pray for the lost. And another thing that was really cool, like us here, one of the other things we learned and we talked about a lot, like here, I'm Sherilyn, and I would say that I'm born and raised Kansan that lives in Missouri, right? And then I'm a United States citizen. But like in Israel, like Yoav is a Jerusalemite, or Jerusalem, I don't know. But they identify as in living in Jerusalem his whole life. And he identifies as, he's not Palestinian, but like they will identify as Palestinian, as Israeli, as Jerusalem, as Muslim. So it's like their ethnicity, and their culture, and their location, and their history, right? And their religion. Like they identify with all of those things, and in a certain order that I can't remember. And that's how they'll know each other, right? Like Yoav, every time we talk to somebody, he could tell us all of the different things, right? And how they identify. And that's one identity for them. And so, too, as we think about it, right? Like, who are we? But believers in Christ, right? And sons and daughters of God. And brothers and sisters, right? In the faith. But that we also have our history that we come with, right? And the places that we grew up, and the places that we live, the places that we worship, right? And that impacts all of us. So anyway, any questions? Because that was a lot. I'm sorry, guys. Not quite. We left the 2nd of June, and we got back the 20th. Is that right? The 18th? We got back that 19th, that Friday. The 20th. Yeah, we left the 2nd and we got back the 20th. So about 3 weeks, right? We were supposed to be back the 14th. Like we were going to be here for the community meal on the 15th. Like we were going to get here that night. So, yeah. That went a lot longer than I really wanted it to be. But okay. But anyway, it was really cool. So if you go back to, oh yeah, no, that was in Masada. No, that was in Qumran. This was in Masada, but we talked about him in Katsrin. That's like a grinding meal. So you would take, like Nathan, you got your thing in? It's really kind of cool. So that's there. So that other piece that's down, the two pieces you put together, and then you like have sticks and you grind it, and it would crush the stones, it would crush the grain and make the flour. So it's kind of cool. So those are original, like those are a couple thousand years old. And then this is just the canyon on the way to Masada. Oh, that is again to Masada. That is his like Herod's palace went off on the cliff. Like there's no way some woman is walking down that to like hit the pool, right? Like no, it was a palace he never used. But you can see how dry it was and how desert-like. But the people stayed there for 3 years, living just fine, while the Romans were trying to build a hill to get in. What else was there, babe? Okay. So here's two. The power, like the presentation thing we used was only so big, so I can only add so many pictures. But that's okay. But I have lots of others I can show you. So here's a map. I don't need this anymore. Nathan, you want to? Goodbye, everybody online.